Hi, welcome to the podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start conversation on Unit 7, Politics of Educational Curriculum. In the previous unit, we have read that the education and the ideology are interrelated with each other. The educational curriculum is not designed just by keeping the child in mind. Several societal, cultural, economic, and political reasons play active roles in shaping the curriculum. Since knowledge defines the identity of a nation to a large extent, education comes to constitute an important part of the political agenda. It is used as an effective tool of indoctrinating people with all that helps political regimes to fulfill their specific political ends. We begin with this unit with a broad overview of major theoretical approaches to the understanding of curriculum from a sociological perspective, then go on to explore how colonists used education as a means to consolidate their power and exercise control over people. Thereafter, we will delve into the politics of language and medium of instruction on the one hand and the interrelationship between education and politics in a comparative framework on the other. Now let us move to the point, concept and perspectives on curriculum planning. In its original sense, curriculum refers to running or race course. The term course is derived from the Latin verb currere, which means to run. Curriculum therefore provides a structure to students and guides them in the process of instruction. The etymological metaphor can be extended to designate not only a race course but also a journey, expedition, or even privilege. The term curriculum should be distinguished from syllabus. Curriculum denotes not just the mere content of a particular subject or area of the study, but the total program of an educational institution. The curriculum delineates the overall rationale of the educational program of an institution. The concept of the curriculum is present, though implicitly, in the earliest educational programs of civilized society, but curriculum as a field of systematic inquiry emerged only during the early 1920s. Gilbert identifies the year 1918 as the junction when curriculum emerged as a self-conscious field of study. Stenhouse defines curriculum as the means by which the experience of attempting to put an educational proposal into practice is made publicly available. It involves both content and method, and in its widest application Rye's account of problem of implication in the institutions of educational system. He suggests that a curriculum should provide a basis for planning a course, studying it empirically and justifying its very basis. According to Rohit Dhankar, a good curriculum framework should be a system of most basic principles and assumptions, capable of providing a rational basis for curricular choices. Curricular choices are not limited to just what should be taught, but indicate choices regarding how to teach, under what conditions, to whom, with what teaching aids, how the evaluation should be carried out, and so on. In other words, the spectrum of choices define what schools should be doing and how. Often, curricular decisions have to do with the choice of knowledge, values, and skills to be included or excluded from the program of education. Alternatively, they relate with the method of developing these abilities in children. It is important to understand that there are two necessary and complementary ways of looking at the curriculum framework, which Posner terms as curriculum development technique and a curriculum conscience. The curriculum development technique is also known as the technical production perspective, which refers to the expertise in developing a curriculum and getting to know its technical and procedural aspects. Curriculum conscience, or the critical perspective, refers to the ability to identify the assumptions underlying the curriculum, that is, what is being taken for granted, and its critical understanding comes under curriculum conscience. Now let us move to the point technical production perspective. The technical production perspective provides a view of rationality in curriculum planning and outlines the techniques which the curriculum planner should keep in mind while formulating the curriculum. Ralph Tyler uses a technical production perspective. Its prevailing influence on the entire curriculum understanding cannot be sidelined. It is important to note that till date, most of the theoretical work on the curriculum revolves around the framework that he developed. Tyler's work addresses the steps which one should follow while making a curriculum. The 4 steps suggested by him deal with the selection of the educational purposes, the determination of experiences, the organization of experiences, and the provision of evaluation. Hilda Taba refines the Tylerian approach and further subdivides Tyler's 4 planning steps. Taba accepts the basic assumption that curriculum planning is a technical or scientific process rather than being a political matter. She favors a systematic, objective, scientific, and research-oriented approach to curriculum development. She too lays stress on objectivity and considers it pertinent for curriculum development. Curriculum designs are to be in accordance with the verifiable consequence on learning or to their contribution to educational objectives. Like Tyler, Taba accepts the assumptions that the learning is the ultimate purpose of schooling. She focuses on the selection and organization of learning experience with emphasis on the learning outcomes and learning objectives in her evaluation approach. Her approach is more perspective than Tyler's procedure of curriculum planning. Posner critically looks at the Tylerian framework and finds that schooling is assumed to be a process, the main purpose of which is to promote or produce learning. Tyler speaks of students as learners. He treats objectives as desirable learning outcomes. The evaluation of the school's process is solely measured by the achievement test scores. Tyler also distinguishes between educational goals and non-educational goals by determining if they could be attributed to learning. The framework also defines curriculum in terms of intended learning outcome. Schooling is therefore reduced to a production system in which individual learning outcomes are the primary product. Taylor's framework evinces a scientific approach towards curriculum planning. It is seen as an enterprise in which the planner objectively and scientifically develops the means necessary to produce the desired learning outcomes. He gives no space to personal biases and prejudices and looks at it in a neutral way. He adheres to means ends reasoning and sees the entire process of curriculum planning as embodying rational decisions that are devoid of the personal reflection of the planners. The entire process is seen in a mechanical mode, and the scientific inclination of his work is evident in his rationale and in the questions that are posed. This perspective of curriculum development is found unacceptable on several counts, more so because it negates the complex forms of personal and mental development. Educational objectives are more than the behavioral objectives of intended learning outcomes. This instrumental approach to knowledge and the education is largely debunked as it espouses the passive model of the man. In the words of Stenhouse, the behavioral instrumental perception defines the curriculum as all of the planned experiences provided by the school to assist the pupil in attaining the designated learning outcomes to the best of their abilities. He found this behavioral objective definition of the curriculum extremely problematic and suggested that the meaningful curriculum seeks to communicate the essential principles and features of an educational proposal in such a form that it is open to critical scrutiny and is capable of effective translation into practice. Now let us move to the next point, critical perspective. The dominant technical production perspective was put into question by the critical perspective. This perspective takes a more critical approach and questions the authority of experts in curriculum planning. The idea of the value-free curriculum decision is given up in this approach. Hence, it also determines the technical production assumption that curriculum development involves a purely technical, scientific, and rational process. Rather, curriculum development is seen as a political and ideological matter. Underlying this framework is the view that the power, knowledge, ideology, and schooling are linked in ever-changing patterns of complexity. Here we want to wind up this conversation, and thank you so much for choosing this podcast.